What you expect, nigga, switch perspectives. You know she got objectives, no one in trying to lecture. Don't let that shit affect you, just let the bros protect you. In the end, flip the script, she must be glad she met you. Yeah. See, now I'm feeling masculine.
Welcome back to Opinionated, the podcast, season 3. I'm your host, Joshua Hicks, and across from me, as always, is my brother from another mother, Ree Washington. And today, we have the lovely couple, Marcus and Nikole. How are you two doing?
Good. Wonderful. You remembered my name. I'm so proud of you.
It was a stretch, but I got it right. Marcus and Nikole, either one can go or start it off, but just tell us a little bit about yourselves.
You got it.
Oh, I knew he was going to make me start. I'm the I'll tell you this. I'm the chatty one in the marriage, so I figured he was going to make me start. I'm Nikole, and, what do you want to know about me? I have a lot of layers. How deep are we getting?
Let's start in the beginning, but like young adulthood.
Young adulthood. Okay, well, here's my long story short. So I am an only child, and I have divorced parents, and I'm finding later in my life that I'm learning how to navigate that, and that has played a big role in my adulthood now. Middle school, high school, I was kind of an entirely different person than I am now, and I'm about to turn 30 at the end of this year, and I think that is something that I've really learned is you change so much. People always tell you that, but you change so much. So back then, I was a very quiet, like in my shell kind of girl, and now anyone who knows me, I'm very loud and extroverted and very confident in my own skin, give or take, depends on the day. But that's kind of my...
And just tell us, what do you do, Nikole?
What do I do? I am a manager for a clothing store. It's a locally owned boutique called Amelia's, and I love it. I've been there since I was 18, and I love it so much. I get to... The whole reason I was put on this earth, I fully believe, is to empower women, especially women who feel how I used to feel when I was in high school and middle school. And every single day I get to help empower these women that never got that jolt of you're a bad bitch energy, and I get to give that to them, and it's amazing. I love it.
And Marcus?
Well, I guess that I played sports all my life. I played baseball all my life, and then played that in college as well. And then I went to Northwest Missouri State and got my degree in physical education and subbed for a little bit, like yourself as well. And then I've been a PE teacher since, but when I was in college, I started my own business as well, online nutrition, personal training, lifestyle changes. And that is, between that and teaching elementary school, those are my two passions where it's at. Yeah, I got elementary.
So a lot of people say they got into teaching because it was like a calling. What made you want to be a physical education teacher?
To be honest, I get to play all day. It's fun. Yeah. So that was kind of the starting thing, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was in high school, I was I want to be a dentist, because if somebody asked you what you want to be, and I said that, it was respectable, and there was no more questions after that. But after I played baseball, I was I don't really know what I want to do. My buddy he was doing that degree as well, and was well, that sounds good. I'd like to have my summers off and be a teacher and get to have fun and stuff. But it actually wasn't until I got into the classes and stuff that I found I understand why this is such an important profession, and why it's such a meaningful thing for myself as well. It's cool.
Explain, because it's easy now for me to go into the teaching just because I can relate.
Yeah,
But explain the difficulties of teaching nowadays, because a lot of people don't understand that it's a different generation of kids and youth that's growing up now. And, just tell them a little bit that they may not know that teachers have to go through on a day-to-day basis.
That's a tough one. So, because I also, I coach a lot of teachers as well in terms of their online stuff. So I always ask them kind of that same questions, you've been in this a lot longer than I have, what your thought process on it. And so what I've kind of gathered is that parents are different, much more than kids now. Obviously technology plays a big role in that as well, but I feel like the way parents parent now, technology is used as a babysitter for the most part, and so a lot of things aren't addressed or talked about, so that makes things very difficult. And then a lot of those kids are coming to school and they're not feeling connected to, and so that's my favorite part, is building those relationships with it. But no, it's sports as well, because like I said, in the PE realm, people are softer in terms of that type of thing as well. It's easier for a kid to quit or for everything to be okay. And in reality, they're just not learning, perseverance and resilience with a lot of things and that grit. And I think that's what's kind of missing.
Because we always, Ree and I were talking. I mean, well, even me and a couple of teachers, we're like, there's a disconnect with the kids as far as like just regular PE. Like a lot of the kids don't even know how to play kickball.
No,
nowadays.
yeah,
and it's
that's
like,
true too. Yeah,
we played every sport growing up. It didn't matter what it was. You're going to play it at least one time throughout the school year, and everybody has to participate.
Yeah.
Now it's almost like, I don't want to say, oh, I'm allergic to grass, or or they throw the ball too hard, or whatever the case is. Then it's like you kind of pamper them.
Yep.
Where it's like everybody gets a participation trophy now just for even taking a chance at it. So it's like, do you feel like you being a former athlete, like, is it hindering the kids now?
Oh, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I think that kind of comes back to technology and what we're doing at home and stuff. But yeah, a lot of kids, they have zero experience doing a lot of just basic stuff. I'm just playing outside. That's the biggest thing. Like I played out. If I wasn't playing sports, I was just playing outside with my friends doing something. And a lot of them, it's just at home, not doing a whole lot with that stuff.
I think me and Josh have to cut you off.
Oh,
We're talking like off camera, and he just like you said, the parenting styles is very different nowadays, and mom and dad think kid is just fine at home because they don't see the other side of them, but then they come to school acting an ass, and then parent teacher conference or your parent comes up to the class like, oh no, Johnny wouldn't do that. Perfect kid, and it's like, no, your kid is actually A, B, and C. If you don't want to believe.
Well,
it.
And to bounce off that, I think that's part of the biggest difference is that like in our generation growing up, but I definitely prior to that, if a teacher said a student was doing something or said your child was doing something, the parents are trusting that. They are like, okay, this is what the teacher's saying. I'm going to address this at home. And maybe not always in the best ways, but they're going to at least address it and say that's not okay. But now it's, I'm listening to my kid at home, and no matter what the teacher is saying, I'm going to trust what my kid is saying. I'm like, you're trusting an 8-year-old over a teacher who's been doing it for 20 years. It gets to the point where like teachers are having to ask me, hey, we're seeing these behaviors in class. I know you're seeing them in here as well because I'll talk to the teachers about that. They're like, can you please email home so that the parent can see that it's not just my classroom. It's not just me that sees this or feels this way, because they just try to write it off like I just don't like my
send his ass home
like the kid. And
I think a bigger scheme, bigger than that even, because I'm very passionate about mental health, therapy, that whole thing. I think touching back onto the topic of, now we don't have children, I feel like we should preface that. Definitely. Other than you being a teacher, but I personally think the access in the technology and social media, as humans, we only have so much that we can take in and process it well and receive it back out, and then also have a plate of how many times we can separate ourselves. And I think something that's very different for parents now than parents when we were kids is we have access to more information than we should have. Like, we don't need to know everything about everyone, about everywhere, about all things. And as much as technology is such a positive, I personally think these parents now are so divided, so thin, because their hearts and their minds are in so many places that it's very easy to be like, my kid's fine, my kid's fine, my kid's fine, because they've read something so much more extreme. And, also in the flip, it's also really easy to be like, my kid must have this because, I read about this and blah, blah, blah. So I do think that is a big factor in it too, is like, as humans and as a freaking society, we are literally spread so thin. And like, you have to have your bearers up to be able to successfully, you're leaking energy when you're not giving energy to like your top 3 things in your life. And right now, as a human race, we give energy to far more than like our top 3 things in life. So I think that's a big part of it too, personally, not from a teacher's perspective, but from a mental health perspective.
And I mean, speaking of mental health, because I mean, again, just going back, there was a pandemic that happened, right? A lot of kids were out of school for 2 years almost. Even like the little babies who didn't really go to kindergarten or first grade. Yeah, they're missing life skills and just they don't really know what's going on. But it's like, speaking on mental health, like, how do you think that's gonna play a role in these kids' upbringing?
I mean, I think massively, because not only did these kids miss chunks of school, these parents also are now in survival mode. As a human race right now, we are in survival mode because it has been nothing but negative things being thrown at us, and it causes you to to start behaving in ways you're conditioned as a child, and how you learn, and whether you realize you're doing it or not, you have these things that turn on in your brain and send you signals and tell you how to behave as protection mechanisms. So COVID, personally for me, and I feel like every single person I have seen and watched, I don't think you can say it hasn't. It awoke something inside of you, whether you realize it or not, because it jarred our routine, it jarred our lives. And I think these parents now are, if you're not practicing self-care and whatever that means for you, you are not fully giving yourself to your significant others, to your friends, to your children, to, because you are literally like in survival mode still. So I think that's, and you can only be such a good parent, spouse, friend when you're in survival mode. I mean, you can't even be good to yourself when you're in survival mode. So I think that's, the mental health crisis is massive after COVID.
So just speaking about mental health and just in general, I guess I have a different outlook on it, just because what I'm around constantly.
Yeah.
I think people like to, let's just say, target mental health or just slap mental health on the, the forefront. Like, I got mental health, and it's, are you really depressed, or are you just dealing with your consequences to your actions that you have done for so many years, your habits that you got accustomed to, and now you're seeing the detrimental state that is leaving, whether it's your body, your mind, or your bank account, or your finances, or any your friendships and stuff like that. Like, I feel like, just from what I'm around, maybe you might have more insight, or maybe you can expand. Like, I just think people are starting to slap mental health on like the forefront, and just that's the overall thing. I got mental health, so then I can't do this and that. I can't work no more because I got mental health, and it's depressing being here, or you haven't really found your niche. Or
I mean, I think the question goes one step further. Why are they detrimental to their friendships? Why do they spend money the way they spend money? Why do they drink the way they drink? Why do they surround themselves with the people they surround themselves with? And I think that question goes further into what was their childhood like, and then it goes full circle back to the elementary school where kids were talking about. I mean, it's so much, and what I'm currently learning in my journey, so much is developed in your childhood. I mean, you're literally, whether you realize it and you're cognizant of it or not, you don't have to have outright trauma to have things have happened in your childhood that now you your brain takes you back to feelings that are accustomed. So if you were used to being the mother of the household, maybe you had 3 or 4 siblings and your parents worked a lot and you always had to help take care of your siblings. You were the oldest. Well, you probably find yourself in situations where you are the caregiver in your friendships. You're the caregiver in your relationship, because your brain takes you back to what is comfortable. Right. So, I agree. I mean, I agree. And I think that's something Marcus and I constantly hold each other accountable to is don't get stuck. There's a bad day. It's not a bad life, Well,
and kind of bounce off what you said, in my coaching business as well, that's what we're dealing with a lot of things is like uncovering kind of what you're going through. And, ultimately mental health, obviously there's a lot of things that kind of go into that, but there's a lot of things that people just don't recognize. If you're not if you're not fueling yourself with positivity, if you're not doing the right things for yourself, you're not going to feel good. And you're going to feel worse and worse and worse, and that's just going to compound over time. So if you're not filling your own cup, if you're not doing what you should be doing to take care of your mind, body, soul, spirit, everything, then you're not going to feel good, and you're going to only feel worse. And then that comes back to, the kid side of things. And this is another thing that, I love teaching because I get to be that role model for my students. And especially as a male in a female-dominated industry in terms of teaching elementary.
You're like, one of 2 male
I'm one of 2 or 3, so I get to be that role model for them and to be that male figure for them. That I know that even if they're getting that at home, they might not be getting the healthy version of that. They're not seeing their parents eat healthy. They're not seeing their parents take care of themselves. And so then I'm like, okay, well, you're going to grow up then to potentially be just like those same parents.
Because you repeat what is safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Your brain takes you back to what
you see the habits that your parents have, and those are going to be your habits. You're either going to become your parents or you're going to become the opposite in spite of them. Yeah. And what parent wants that? Right. And ultimately, if you're a parent, this is when I talk to my clients about it, though. I'm like, you've got 4, 5, and 6-year-old at home. Whatever they see you doing is what's going to be their life. Or like I said, they're going to do it in spite of you. Yes. So if you want them to, what do you want your kid to be like when they're 25, 35, 45? Okay, now emulate that yourself, and then they will become that. Otherwise, they're going to have to learn on their own and have to struggle. And then they're going to have to hire me in 20 years to figure out their health because you didn't do your job in teaching this.
I think we all have to, like, sit back. I mean, honestly, social media, man, like, sit back, and we almost need to learn how to metabolize so much information that we receive on an everyday basis. I mean,
think we consume a lot of negative stuff,
we
whether we do it on purpose or not. Like,
and you can only consume so much.
Right. Well, a lot of things I see on social media or just I can't have conversations with certain people because I know just
where it's going to go.
Or everything is negative or just has this, this unhopeful approach.
There's so much negative to have access to now. Like, it's amazing how much access we have, and knowledge is power, and I fully believe that. But then I also think at the end of the day, when I'm laying in bed trying to go to sleep, there's certain things I didn't need to know today. You know what I mean? I didn't need to know this.
It's draining.
Yeah.
Well, and misery loves company. So if somebody is miserable, they want other people to be miserable because it makes them feel better in that moment. And so that's
the only
what that
one
is.
who is going through something.
Yeah.
But we're addicted to it because literally marketing managers, that is their job, to make us addicted. And I'm sure there's 700 other titles that are in that job that are supposed to make us addicted to it, and we're so addicted to it. So like when we become parents, it's important to me that I teach our child or children how to responsibly consume media, because it's fun and it's great, but I feel like that's something we're just not teaching. We didn't learn it. Our generation didn't learn it.
We didn't have it
so
for
new.
the first half of our lives.
Yeah, so now we have all this technology, and we're like, what the hell do we do with all this? In our brains. This is why I think mental health is such a crisis, because we just can't. Even when
I see the kids at my school, I'm just like, oh, this is all you know. Like, this is literally what you've grown up with your whole life.
And are they learning how to metabolize it? Are they learning how to decipher it?
They're doing it too, like unaccompanied by an adult. Like, when we were growing up, if I'm playing a video game, if I'm watching a bad movie or something like that, like I'm doing that with my family, and they can speak on certain things. They can say, hey, this is for this movie. We're not going to go to school and say this.
When
we're not
we
going
first
to
had
have
like
this
Facebook,
mindset.
I mean, I was in high school. My mom had my Facebook password for a couple years. You know what I mean? Like, I was very
honestly,
censored on social media.
You can't see what I was.
Yeah, you could see
have my password.
I couldn't even have a Facebook until sophomore year, middle school. Like,
and I remember at the time being so mad at my mom, like, why does she need my password? And now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like, no wonder, it's just, So I just feel like that's just a huge piece of the puzzle, in my opinion, is social media, internet.
Yeah, and it's also like a part of, like, in a previous episode, Ree and I were saying, parents, like, what do you see most parents do when, like, a little 2-year-old is acting up? They give them an iPad or iPhone, and it's like, that's what keeps the child calm. And it's like, nobody's really raising their child anymore.
To dissect their emotions, and that is something that I think in general is not really taught.
Just being aware of
your emotions, why you're feeling what you're feeling. Yeah, and that's what I'm learning in therapy right now, is how, and I have great parents, but they weren't taught really how to learn their emotions. So of course I didn't. It's
mismanaged.
Yeah.
Well, and the downside is that it falls on the elementary school teachers and the counselors of that age.
But
and
you can't teach 500 kids to do that.
And even so, like, there's not enough hours in a day. Like, you want us to work on this curriculum, but now, like, and yes, that should be a part of it in teaching the social emotional learning. Like, we actually have a 30-minute window built into our day next year to just a 30-minute block every morning for SEL. Like,
that's awesome.
Exactly. It's awesome, cool. But it needs to be that needs to be happening at home
because all we focus on is testing.
Yeah. So I love that we're stepping outside of that and focusing on, like, honestly, like those much more than the curriculum.
Our kids are
those
still
are life
testing
skills
right now.
That's ridiculous.
It's the end of the school year.
Transitioning from, like, kids, like, where do you see it at when it comes to these adults that come to you, Marcus, and and I've been, a client before and stuff like that, and I know, like, after I got done doing my cut, it was just like, hey, Ree, you better snap out of it, or you gonna, you're gonna go down this rabbit hole. And you got to work a little bit harder next time because. So where do you see, those childhood, traumas and habits build up and then they bloom into who they are.
Well,
now.
so, coming back to it, a lot of people, they are who their parents were that they got to see. So they're coming up with all these predispositions and habits already kind of formed in their life and stuff, and that's hard to this is a hard thing. If you treat it like bodybuilding or just living a healthy lifestyle, if you compare that to like any other sport, and I just got on the phone with a couple of clients yesterday talking about this exact same thing. If you play baseball all your life, you play football all your life, you're working on that sport for those 2 hours you're at practice, those 3 hours you're at practice. It might be every day, but it's only those 3 hours. When you're at home watching TV, when you're at home eating, you're not thinking about that. And if you are, you're not putting work into it. But nutrition and sleep and stress management and all these things, these are a lot of skills that none of us were ever taught. If you had a health class in high school, it was a semester long. That's all we had to take. You had 2 weeks where you talked about nutrition, maybe. And it was the basics. Fruits, veggies, we know this stuff.
It was a food pyramid.
Yeah, and the same stuff that was taught all before that we knew that in elementary school as well. And it's easy to know that stuff, but it's really hard to apply it. It's hard to apply it when you're working overnight jobs. It's hard to apply it when you have children. It's hard to apply it when you're tired because you're not making enough time to get it to sleep at night. And that might be because you're stressed because you don't have poor, stress management skills.
I think nutrition, speaking on that word, has such a bad image that nutrition is supposed to be it's supposed to just be like skinny, ripped, size 0. Like, nutrition is far beyond a size and an image. Nutrition literally is from your mental health down to like your physical health. It has nothing to even do with like what you look like. And I think that is what we're finally as a society starting to kind of grasp. But you don't need to eat healthy to look a certain way. And working in clothing, I feel like that is something that I hear constantly, like people, because my main customer is a 40 to a 6-year-old woman, and they don't like the way they look. They don't like the size that they're in. They feel like they can't wear certain things because they're a certain size, which makes me crazy. You should wear whatever makes you feel confident and powerful always, but
I think nutrition goes beyond, what you eat is what you mentally consume and what you emotionally digest.
Yes. And I think that is such, I get asked all the time when people find out my husband is a personal trainer. They're like, oh, does he tell you what to eat? And I'm like, no. Like, also, I'm a grown woman and I make my own choices.
I'm eating this ice cream.
Yeah. I'm like, he knows.
I know when not to say things.
Yeah, and yes, for me, like, and everyone has different foods that are going to affect them differently, and that's what we also don't understand because we just are eating such processed foods all the time. But, there's certain foods for me, if I eat too much of it, it literally affects my mental health because for 3 days, my stomach hurts. And your stomach and your brain produce cells at the same time. So, like, when you are having digestion issues, it is also clouding your brain. So, I'm not a scientist or in the health professional field, so that's literally all I can say on that topic because I won't probably say it right. But it's crazy to me that nutrition has to mean like you eat carrots and you're a twig. Yeah, like nutrition is so much more. It's so much more. And that's what I wish people would grasp.
Like, no, just even like just listening to you all, because like, again, I am one of those people grew up in a community, especially like in the black community. It's like when you hear, we don't have those resources when it comes to like nutrition. Like, so when we had lunch in school, it was like carrots, like you said. It would be like carrots and ranch and like, oh, maybe a fruit cup and that's it. But like everything else is fried or is processed. And even when you go to school lunches and school cafeterias now, there's only certain community or certain area schools that may have, top tier lunch services. And it's like, how do you expect these kids to, we
weren't taught this shit either. McDonald's was our go-to because our parents didn't know any better, And pop, I was drinking pop at like pop, soda, whatever everyone says, at like 7, just all the time. I had like so many cavities by the time I was like elementary school because of how much pop I was drinking. I don't know. It takes getting uncomfortable as the adult to learn about this stuff and to understand the importance of it to change your lifestyle, which will then help change your kids' view on things.
I think it's the time that you also put into things.
Oh, yeah.
But just switching lanes a little bit, me and Josh always talk about it, just about the people who you are around and stuff like that, and just how important that plays a role in your life and, the success that you might gain from it. But just being around it, you guys are together, you guys are married, and I think just being around that, having friends who are married, like, kind of gives you that hope to look up to. Like, I come from a divorced home, you do as well. So I think that also shapes why you want a family, or why you want to be, with somebody. And for him as well, like, he comes from a pretty good family as well. So it's kind of like being around people who have that kind of shapes what you don't have, and that you didn't have, and that you want.
You want to be around those people. Exactly.
Or you just see how they grow up, and it's kind of like something like you not necessarily missed out on, but like you're like, man, it could have been different. And the love that, you could have got from this parent, that you didn't receive, that you go look for it within other people. You and I have spoken about that. So how do you guys make it work? I mean, not every relationship's perfect. Everybody has their ups and downs, but, just maybe from an individual standpoint, and then collectively how you guys make it work. Like, we spoke about communication and how important it is. Josh and I spoke about communication, how, how easy it is to miscommunicate with each other. If you guys are, thinking the same thing, but you guys aren't voicing it, and how uncomfortable those conversations are. Like, when you upset with, your partner, or you, like, it's uncomfortable to go to them, but like, hey, look, I'm gonna say this. If you know who I am, like, you can help me dissect it, what I'm saying, or you can help me put, the right picture to what I'm thinking, because things can get misinterpreted all the time. So what are some, things individually that you guys do to, help the relationship or keep it together, and then collectively, like, what do you guys do?
I mean, I would say you already said it, the communication factor. I mean, there's nothing that's more important than that, because any issue that we've ever had, we've been able to talk through it.
Right.
No matter what it was, no matter how hard it was. And honestly, some of those things might have broke other people, or might have just created resentment or misunderstanding, like you said. And Nikole has a metaphor, like the laundry pile grows and grows and grows.
I'm trademarking that right now. The laundry pile. Trust me, it's a good one.
It's gonna blow.
When something bad happens, if you don't talk about it and work through the issue, and you just close your eyes to it and just like say, I'm not going to worry about this, I'm just going to push it off to the side. Well, now that's in the laundry pile.
And when you haven't done laundry for 2 months, you're like, where the fuck do I even start? I'm not doing any laundry. That is the whole concept. Like, you have these things you don't talk about, and before too long, you're so goddamn deep that you don't even know where to begin. Like, your guys' problems are so deep. I will say, I think that communication thing came from day one for us. Like, definitely. We were best friends before we started, like, dating romantically or having any, like, romantic moments before we were kissing. Yeah. And
PDA.
I think that was a huge factor. I mean, I think we were both in long high school relationships that went into college, and I think just from what I know about his and what I know about my own is there was no communication. High school, you don't know shit about that kind of stuff. And I saw the mistakes that were made. And I think, too, working with women in their 40s to 60s every day, one of the biggest things I saw and what I would hear these women complain about is communication. It all went back to, like, they just didn't tell each other certain things. So from day one, I was probably too open with Marcus. I mean, I think there were things where he's like, I don't know if I need to know this, but I'm glad you're telling me.
Things such as too open, though, because I know as a man, I want to know what you're thinking all the time, just because I'm a fixer. If I could change something that's going to make you feel better, but not change myself to the point where I don't feel like myself, I'm going to do it. You know what I'm saying? So is there too much that you could really tell them?
I don't think so. I mean, like when something happens in your life and you want to call your best friend, I think when you get married and if your significant other isn't that person you want to call, that should kind of be a red flag to you. Like, I have 3 of the best friends in the world, and they are top of my list to call, but, like, Marcus is the very first person I want to call on anything and everything. I think communication about your vulnerabilities too is a really big one.
And that's the hardest one, probably.
That's the fucking hardest.
It's hard to recognize it, but then it's really hard to
It's hard to like tell someone else example. So
Mark, you think everybody gonna use you, or you think you can get hurt again?
And there comes back your trauma from your childhood, whether it was outright trauma or just learned behavior.
I wouldn't even say childhood. It's like a relationship. Like anything that you. What were you saying before that?
Well, so a couple of examples. So Marcus and I have a dog. It's my first dog I've ever owned. It's Marcus's first dog he's owned without like his parents. And, you know, he's got issues like every dog. And when something comes up with him, we both get very stressed and panicked and mean to each other. And we finally have realized that it makes us very vulnerable when something goes wrong with the dog because neither of us really know what the fuck to do. So
or same thing with like house issues,
house stuff,
house like maintenance stuff.
Yeah, like we get in our biggest fights around
so
house maintenance stuff because Marcus feels it's very important to me that I have a home that makes Marcus feel at home. So when something goes wrong in the home, it freaks me out. And Marcus, I love him to death, but he's not the most handiest.
I was never taught.
He was never taught the handy stuff, but that's not why I married him. I knew he wasn't handy. I don't give a hell he was not handy. But I think he thinks I'm the man. I'm supposed to be handy.
Well, that and like I'm feeling vulnerable because I'm not trying to break something or ruin something. Then now I got to go pay for it.
So then we get real mean and snappy to each other, and then it's like we have to sit down and be like, you know what? I was just a bitch to you, and it has nothing to do with you. It's because I feel really vulnerable right now. I don't, something I'm learning about myself, and this is when they start saying you get past like that fun marriage shit, is like I kind of struggle with like feeling comfortable with myself when I'm naked. It's weird. It's a weird thing that I knew I didn't struggle with this until deep into marriage. And Marcus is having to navigate this with me, and if I couldn't be super, super vulnerable and communicative with him, this could be a huge laundry pile piece. But luckily I'm able to, and he is so receptive and understanding of my vulnerabilities.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the next thing is, being empathetic and just being understanding and trying to see something from, not just how you initially maybe perceived it and that it's not you, but just kind of working through that,
I feel like it's like a text message almost. Like you send it your way and they're interpreting it their way. And I think you can still, that's a part of being understanding.
Individually, I think the biggest thing is we both put our mental health and what makes our mental health the best first. Like, I understand definitely. Marcus needs to prioritize the gym. It's not something I'm going to argue with him about or fight with him about. Like, that is when he can zen and get his mind right. So, and he's told me that from the get-go. That is a number one priority for me. So, he prioritizes himself, and it's honestly something that I have to learn, that I continue to learn to do, but he's such a role model at it. Like, I admire it so much. So
that allows me to be my best in every shape of it.
So I make sure I prioritize me and what makes me the best, because you can't be your best to each other if you can't be your best to yourself.
What are some tips before we wrap this up, like that you would give people searching for like mental health advice or just health in general?
I know. I feel like our whole tagline is health and mental health.
That's what I'm gonna name the episode.
Yeah, health and mental health.
You got a tip?
Say that again.
Like, do you guys have any tips for people who may be searching for like help towards like mental health or just health in general? Because somebody might be watching this and they're like, man, maybe I do need to go talk to someone, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if
their number is 816.
Oh, no.
If you have somebody that you feel like you possibly can be, I mean, and that's part of the issue is that you don't feel like you can be vulnerable with that, but it's, one, you got to be able to do self-reflection and to really be able to just ask yourself hard questions and work through those hard things. That's something I always talk about with people about choosing your hards. Like, that's a hard thing to do, but it's the most important thing to do. Yes. And then obviously if you have somebody like I have Nikole, I'm very lucky to have that. She has me with that stuff. But I know for you,
I think you find those people though by being vulnerable.
Definitely.
You find your best people by being vulnerable.
When you test those waters,
Yeah, and yes, you're going to run into some assholes, and that's part of the deal, that's life, but if you can get vulnerable with yourself and you can be vulnerable with people, you will be shocked what you will receive back. I think people want human connection, and they want to see that your life isn't as perfect as it may look on social media, and you will be surprised how many people you will find commonality with just by being vulnerable. So if I can, shed any light, it's don't be scared to be vulnerable, because it hurts, but it's the best thing you can do for yourself, honestly. That's like the biggest thing I'm learning going into my 30s is like vulnerability is like the new thing.
Well, and that's what connected, us three is you come over and us and you being vulnerable with us to have deeper conversations and stuff. Right. That's what connected us a whole lot more.
Absolutely.
And you might have tried that with 10 other people and they might have, shot that down on not giving you the right response with it. But we've been able to have that together.
For sure. And I think for me, was really what set it in was going through that whole process and you guys being there. And then a couple of days after that, I heard that a friend of mine passed. Mm-hmm. And I would think I was already on my way to y'all house, and I was crying in the car. Mm-hmm.
I know, I'll never forget it.
It was just a long day. It was just like some long periods of my life, and I always will appreciate you guys. I mean, I feel like I still owe you guys. I know you guys say I don't, but
owe us.
But
we're
just
your
me,
friends.
Right? But just me, just knowing how I am, like I always want to give back in the way that I can. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I remember pulling up to your doorstep, my eyes are just red as fuck. I'm just like. So I think we ate and then we played Super Mario Kart or whatever, all night. You know what I'm saying? Whether you guys were tired or not, it meant something to me because I'm like, they might have been tired, might have had a long day, but it's like, I got to be here for him right now. And I feel like I carry that,
And that vulnerability bonded all of us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We always have your back, and I know you always have our back. So
I still feel like I owe you because I'm like, you know what? I'm like, y'all going to go to my sushi place that I go to. But look, I'm paying for everything.
Stop it, Ree.
I did, but I told the manager.
I know, and I was like, he did not need to freaking do that. Listen.
Josh, I told the manager, look, they don't pay for nothing. I'm paying for it. Here's my card information when I get done.
He did not need to do that. We will always.
And I was at work too.
Well, and luckily we got a lot of stuff. I thought I was buying.
Yeah.
And luckily I didn't pay for it.
I
was cool with that.
But I just think you attract when you attract the right people when you're vulnerable. I mean, you do. You attract some bad ones, but you attract the good ones, and that's how you find your people, and that's how you get through mental health. That's how you uncover the layers, and find a way to go to therapy. Everyone should go to therapy. Everyone should go to therapy, whether you think you need to or not. And there's so many resources and so many affordable ways to do it now. Google it. You'll find 100 million ways. I mean, truly.
That is solid advice. Marcus and Nikole, thank you guys for stopping by and sharing everything that you know and your knowledge. It means a lot to myself and Ree, and we hope to have you guys on in the future.
Thanks for having us.
He's Ree Washington.
Mr. Gates.
I go by the name of Joshua Hicks. This wraps up another great episode of Opinionated, the podcast, season 3. Love always. As humans, we tend to thirst for knowledge, but on this quest for knowledge comes judgment. When a person cannot comprehend the depth of a topic, subject, or person, they'll judge or make fun. On your path towards success and happiness, your opposition will be the first to say you can't. That is when you realize you are doing the right thing. This week, continue thirsting for knowledge and growing as a person. As always, Sila.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus.